Welcome to Peak Talent, the podcast that explores what really makes the difference on a journey to success and high performance. I meet with leaders and athletes to discuss their leadership, lessons learned, and advice. I'm Dani Trudel, and my goal is to bring you insightful conversations that invite you to see your journey and leadership in a new light while uncovering the secrets and contagious inspiration of surpassing yourself. In this episode, I'm excited to welcome Nick Loporcaro, an accomplished executive and healthcare leader with a proven track record of driving growth, innovation, and impact. I wanted to explore what shaped his leadership journey, how he keeps his life balanced, and his advice for the next generation of leaders. We'll begin with his perspective on the healthcare landscape. Together, we'll discover his secrets to success, from engineer to healthcare president and CEO, leading with curiosity and authenticity. Nick Loporcaro is the president and CEO of Global Medical Response, a leading provider of mobile patient care and emergency medical services. He brings over 25 years of leadership experience, most of it in healthcare. Nick holds a degree in mechanical engineering from McGill University. Over the years, he has also contributed his expertise to various healthcare boards and community initiatives, demonstrating his commitment to improving both the industry and the communities it serves. Outside of work, Nick is passionate about cooking and skiing, activities that help him recharge and stay fully in the moment. He is a devoted father of two and enjoys spending quality time with his family. I had the privilege of working alongside Nick when he was president at McKesson, and I witnessed firsthand his ability to lead with both vision and heart. I'm truly honored to share his journey with you. Happy listening. Hello, Nick. Welcome to the Peak Talent podcast.
Morning. Great to be here.
Well, let me start by congratulating you on your incredible career and the lasting impact you've had in healthcare, but also in leadership. It's quite amazing.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to start with your perspective. Before diving into your journey as a CEO and leader, I'd like to get your perspective on the challenges and opportunities in healthcare and business today, and more particularly, the impact that you would see on emerging talent and leadership.
Great. Well, again, great to be here, Danny. Great to see you. My perspective, I think, and I recently used this. It's you remember the expression "never let a good crisis go to waste,"
Yeah.
right? It's been impressive. I was reflecting on this prior to our podcast. Over 22 years now in healthcare, and I can tell you, 20 years ago, we thought, "Wow, healthcare and business, things were tough, and how are we going to get out of this?" And I think one of the things you learn over time is, I don't recall when it was ever really easy or things were clear and there was a lot of clarity. And it's almost like whack-a-mole, like game where you hit one thing, something else pops up. And I guess the overall or the overarching perspective is you need to just be ready for everything. A lot of what I've been using even currently with my teams is tune out the noise, focus on what it is, you can control and execute on, focus on what you believe is right. And ultimately, albeit maybe a bit of a naive perspective, things will fall into place. I think that would be the overarching perspective on healthcare. There's always going to be a need. Whether you look at the demographics, you look at the state of where people are at with respect to healthcare, and there has been improvement. I think there's a lot of room for growth and innovation. At the same time, you think about lifespans currently, quality of life, and as much as I'm probably one of the toughest critics on it, just to continue to look at how we can improve. I think there've been great strides made in healthcare, both from a true value and delivery of what we deliver as healthcare and business opportunities around it.
And then I hear being able to adapt and expect that that's the norm.
Yes. The only constant is change. Is sort
Yeah.
of like one of those that I live by, and once you've set something, it's probably obsolete after the ink dries, and you need to be thinking about what's around the next corner.
Yeah. And what impact do you see on what I like to call emerging talent and leadership in that kind of environment or that kind of situation?
Two tracks for that, and you've probably heard this from me in the past and in our working relationship. I think when I look at talent, and I would take talent versus leadership, albeit talent feeds into leadership. There's talent from the perspective of what's required, what roles, what skill sets are required, and how do you decide the track, one, that you want to follow, and two, what role you want to play in that function or need. So, first and foremost, if we focus just on healthcare, is this a field that resonates with you, that you have passion around? And as you start thinking about what do I need to pursue, what do I need to prepare myself around? Then there's the leadership track. And the reason I differentiate those two is all too often I'm a big believer in, and I think this is a corporate America issue. We kind of continue to push people that they have to follow a leadership track
Mhm.
versus valuing in their roles.
Mhm.
I've been pretty blessed in my career, whether it was at McKesson or currently in others, meeting individuals that did what they were doing for 30, 40 years. My father worked in a wire mill for 38 years, and they provided their 100% plus, loved what they were doing, were glad to be part of the team, and had enough self-awareness that that's the role they wanted to play. And then there were the individuals that want to pursue leadership roles and management roles. And I think that's a track where we collectively need to get better in identifying that talent.
Mhm.
How do we get our arms around them and support them? But the most important thing, and I believe this probably was a contribution from our work together, is the aspiration.
Mhm.
Is there a desire to want to do that? And then provide them with great insights so their aspiration and what's really going to be required in the role are aligned. I often, when I'm brought someone to interview for one of my direct reports roles, I often use, a few quotes to them. I say, someone smarter than me has decided that you can technically do the role. So that's not my job in the interview is not that. My job is to give you, answer your questions and help you then decide, do you really want the job? And if so, why are you the right person for it? And then I have what I call my trick question. I'll always ask everybody, so what is it you think you want to do? And all too often, people say, well, I'd like to be CEO like you one day. And then I'll say, I didn't ask you what title you wanted. I asked you what it is you want to do. Because I'm not sure you want this job or the jobs. And really helping people reflect on that and,
Mhm.
what is taking on that role. So a lot of clarity around what the role is. And then we can help get, and by the way, and be ready that when they fall down, we can pick them up, dust them off and give them another shot. And if they can't, let's be realistic about what are the right roles for them as well.
Mhm. So I hear that being clear on what you want, and I'll add to that, knowing yourself as well, right?
Yeah.
So that you can actually contribute and be well.
Now that's the irony of that is that's coming from someone who doesn't know what he wants to be when he grows up. And my wife will tell you I haven't grown up yet. So
Well, that's good.
yeah.
So you're now president and CEO of Global Medical Response, and you've held several board and executive roles. You've built a remarkable leadership career. So what's the secret to your success?
Danny, I don't know if there's a secret. I when asked that question and reflecting on it, I think one of the things that comes to mind is curiosity.
Mm.
Um, really being curious about and intrigued. And for me, again, consider myself privileged that I often tell people I stumbled into healthcare when I started at McKesson. It was due to my dad's health. I'm a mechanical engineer by training. Um, Having that curiosity of understanding the why and what's your why on what you're driving towards it. I would tell you that's one of the key drivers for me. Um, Wanting to be able to contribute change around the things I'm curious about have kept me going. as well. And for those, for people that know me well enough, I think would attest to this. It's never been about the title or the comp package, and yet that's kind of followed. The pursuit of wanting to jump in, and what's been interesting, and I think you see this a lot, and whether it's in sports or any type of team, leadership sort of naturally gets identified, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the people that are willing to take on the roles and be able to get people engaged and drive towards something. And I think that really comes with authenticity around the pursuit. Are you being genuine about it? Is it resonating with the people around you? Do you have interest in their success and helping them get to it? I think all of that becomes sort of this flywheel as to, getting you to what you want to solve, what it is you want to have success around. Also, it's interesting, and half kidding on the last point, I I guess I'm a self-professed fix and build guy. Like to take on a challenge, fix it, establish it, grow a team around it that can take it, and then go off to the next thing.
Mm.
I think if you were to look at my path, you would find a lot of that over my
Mm.
career as well.
So I hear, well, curiosity, change, someone who likes to drive change and take on challenges. And I guess it's adaptability to different environments and different situations that you're able to take on all those challenges.
Yeah, and on change, it's not just for the sake of change. I think that's another thing, and it's almost become in vogue for the last couple of decades. Is people, well, we've got to change things. Well, sort of why? Certain things don't have to change, and certain things do. And back to the adaptability point and the pivoting, it's sort of giving people clarity around what's changing around your environment and how do you adapt to it, right? And one of the things I find I often quote Pareto on the 80-20. It's sort of the 80%, regardless of what industry, what business, is pretty much the same. And especially when you get to leadership roles. I'll often say in jest, actually yesterday on one of our executive team calls, I'll kind of go, if it wasn't for the people, our jobs would be easy. And what we tend to forget in our roles is our job is the people.
Mm-hmm.
That's our job. We're not, in the industry I lead now and the company I lead now, we're 35,000 people. 25,000 of them are clinicians, and they're on the streets with their hands on patients. We, the leadership, don't have our hands on the patients, but we're extensions of those hands,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we need to make sure that our job is making sure that they get what they need to do what they need to do for patients in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So at times, I think as you roll it up, it's less about the industry or the discipline and more about in leadership roles. It really is about the people without, being too cliche.
Yeah. Well, I've known you as someone who is very close to their team and that values people and talent, investing in people as well. So it's a trait. And I remember your wall of quotes.
Hold on a second.
There you are.
I figured at one point she's going to ask me about that.
Of course. So that's something that, or what role does that play for you?
Look, I guess for your audience, the one I should tell people, I always tell people I have this boring hobby. I collect quotations. Those are the top 50 and have remained, quite frankly, pretty constant as my top 50. I'll share one. I was mentioning to you as we were preparing for this week, I spent a shift on an ambulance with one of our teams in the inner city of Buffalo. And prior to that, I was doing site visits around the country, meeting our supervisory teams and our field teams. And there's a quote on that wall from Eisenhower that says, corn farming looks mighty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles from the field.
Mm,
And I would use that in the town halls and have used it to tell people, like, I'm the guy with the pencil 1,000 miles away.
mm,
And how do you, one, spend some time in the field and make sure that people are giving you the inputs they need because they're the ones actually plowing. And so to your question, I often, and there's one on there that means a whole lot to me, which is if. that I look at. And there are two lines in there that are of particular interest that I never lose sight of. And I was at a EMS memorial. Unfortunately, we have to hold this event every year, remembering the ones that we've lost in the field. And someone had come up to me, one of our field force folks, and said to me, thanks for letting us little people feel so good. And
Mm,
I put my hand on her shoulder and I said, I have a favor to ask of you. I never want you thinking like you're the little people.
mm,
I said, we're here to serve you. Whether you want to call it reverse pyramid, whatever business book analogy you want to, and I've had instances like that before where I don't ever want anybody feeling that there's this order. And that's without being too naive, that I understand I have the CEO title, and it's another quote from Martin Luther King that says, if you're going to be a street sweeper, sweep streets like Beethoven wrote music.
mm,
Have pride in what you're doing. Now, we, the leadership and management, need to make sure that there's a culture, that we behave accordingly, that we respect people for what they bring, and we give them what they need. And I think if we could get to that, then there's no little people and there's no pecking order. It's everybody's got a role to play.
mhm. What I hear through that is a lot of respect for people, and I would probably add that as one of your secrets to your success. You're very good at connecting with people.
Thank you. Well, I'm genuinely interested in people. For the longest time in our family, the running joke is, you don't send me to the grocery store for a quick errand, because I'm going to read the name tag and I want to know about you. And
You're gonna connect with people that are there. Now, I'm curious to know, what do you think helped you to get where you are today? If you could pinpoint either a pivotal moment, a person, a key decision, what do you think that would be?
there have been a few. I kind of label them those defining moments.
Yeah.
Some of this about me. I grew up in an Italian immigrant family. Both my parents immigrated, as well as my in-laws. And my dad, at 21 years old, and he was one of the fortunate ones, as he arrived, had a job waiting for him in a steel mill. And my dad spun metal wire for 38 years, 3 shifts and extra shifts. And I always say, I'm the youngest of four by a good stretch, and realized early on that, my parents did their utmost to make sure we had a roof over our head, we had meals on the table, school was taken care of, but anything else we knew we had to go get something. And I say this to people, and sometimes they think there's hyperbole around this. I have not worked since I was 10 years old. The paper route, working in the grocery store, and through school, I've always worked. Some of that was, yes, to earn some money. But what I learned later on in life was, it taught me about people,
Mm,
and it taught me about every role. And it gets back to that point of, why do I have so much respect for it? Because
mm,
we need all of those things.
mhm,
And as leaders, sometimes I think we lose sight of, it's important for them to have pride and be engaged around what they do.
mm,
And I've had a variety of roles. I've been fortunate to work in a bunch of different industries. So back to those defining moments, first and foremost, just watching my parents do what they did and from what they came from was definitely, one of the pillars for me. On the leadership track, there's probably a bit of sadness in what I'm going to say, and there's a void of people willing to take on those
mm,
roles, like wanting to move forward. A lot of times, and unfortunately, I see it and continue to see it, is people wanting things to just for someone else to take care of it.
mm,
And that for me, I don't know why, but has always driven me. Like, if there's that void, I'm going to step into it. If the void's not there, then typically you won't find me wanting to step. So there's always back to whether it's curiosity, that intrigue, or that desire to want to move forward. And where I would seal that is, and I remember this. I was just about to graduate from university and had met a gentleman in business in Montreal, and he was, I guess, kind of interviewing me. And he said something to me that has never left me, and it was along those lines of, um, and I'm always careful with this one that I was gifted to be able to make that change, and it'd be a waste if I didn't use it. And
Mm,
that always kind of has left me almost like a responsibility. And I'm always careful with that one because, I don't want it to sound pretentious, but it's sort of like if you have it, you need to use it.
mm.
And sort of whether it's giving back, giving forward, I don't know. But that's always like resonated with me. And that's probably 40 years ago.
So through that, I also hear that you started working very young, so learned the discipline of work. And I also feel that there's confidence. You're a confident leader.
It's interesting. An individual both you and I know well, who I consider now one of my best friends, Alain. You know, Alain said something once, and it encapsulates a bit of what you said, and it's almost like an oxymoron. Where he said, I have this confident humility. It's sort of where it's. I don't know that it's confidence, because one of the things I think, and this I'll credit Alain with as well. He's used it. There are times when I almost suffer that imposter syndrome, for lack of a better term,
Mm.
and I wonder if it's confidence or just the willingness to jump into the fray and kind of see where we go, right?
Mm.
And I'm not dismissing. Yes, over time you continue to grow that confidence around, where you can make an impact. But a lot of it, especially early on in my career, was kind of jumping in and going, you know,
Yeah.
let's see where this goes.
Well, it goes with curiosity, being curious and courageous and leaning in and just stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now, what kind of leadership style do you think you embody?
Um, Again, I've had to put a label on it, and people have. They use the term servant leadership. And
Hmm.
I have some uneasiness with that. It goes back to what you said, being mindful and respectful of people, and making sure that this is not just cliche on a poster, that you really are thinking and doing that. And I think if that's a definition, or that what servant leadership stands for, then yes, I guess that would frame a lot of it. The other one that I do my utmost at is sort of balance for people. I never shy away from the extreme. It's not the extremes like, oh my God, things are bad, and you make things have people keep thinking like, oh, you got to work hard because, or things are just like great. I think just be honest with people and transparent. Now, package that information in ways that people know how to digest it as well.
Hmm.
And it's interesting for me, especially in this day and age. You and I, what do we want? We may not always like what we're hearing, but if it's coming from a reliable source, and a source that you think is honest and genuine, then at least you're going to appreciate it. These
Hmm.
town halls I did this past week, I said to people, I said, I want to hear from you. Now, my commitment to you is I'm going to listen. I'm going to reflect on it. I may give you an answer you don't like. A lot of times I find there's that disconnect around, well, I told them, so they're going to do it. No. But what we owe people in these roles is listen, reflect, consider, and then give people an answer, a reply.
Hmm.
They may not like the answer, but at least they go, well, great. Like they actually listened to it.
Hmm.
And then they can buy in and understand why you either made a decision or didn't make a decision. So I don't know how to label that, Danny. Again, whether that's servant leadership or just, I don't know, good practice.
Yes. When I ask this question, it's always interesting. People think about it, and it's not always easy to put a label. So it doesn't have to have a label. But what I know of you is that you're someone who delivers results as well, right? You like to achieve your targets, your objectives, but you do it in a way that you bring people along. And
It's
like you said,
it,
authenticity.
yeah, and it's more than just bringing people along. And when I took on this role, the company was and it's very public. We were in dire straits. I mean, we were heading towards bankruptcy, and now this has been not only a full 180. We're doing awesome, And I remember, because I came from outside this, it's healthcare, but this is an industry I didn't know very well. And I remember meeting what I consider our, the top 40, our senior leadership team. And I looked at them all and I said, look, guys, I'm not that smart about this industry. And if you're relying on me to come up with the answers, then we're in trouble.
Mm.
Like, I have a role, but I need not only your insights, like you're the ones that are going to actually move this forward. And that's how we're going to get to those results. Now, again, I track record, knock on wood, has been great from that perspective. We achieved the results and have surpassed them often as well. And I remember when I joined McKesson in the automation business. Remember, we took this fledgling little business and
Yeah.
grew it. And it was probably third or fourth year in. I remember I had a town hall and we would double our budgets every year and beat them and continue to grow. And there was a woman in our accounting group. I remember her because she was an introvert, and she had the courage to raise her hand and ask me a question. And she said, "Nick, you're showing us a budget that's double what we did this year, and we've doubled last year." She goes, "What gives you confidence that we're going to be able to do that?" I looked at her. I said, "Because I know you guys believe it, and if you believe it, you're going to get it done.
Mm.
If you don't believe it, I'm not going to get it done. You're going to get it done."
So it's really involving people more than just taking them along. It's really working with them
Yeah.
for
It's,
them.
look, I can't say that there's no leaders that have been able to single-handedly, I guess, achieve, but I can tell you that's not been the case for me.
Mhm.
I'm not the one that's generated the results.
Yeah. Now, I want to shift a little bit. I want to ask, many leaders find inspiration and strength in their personal lives. So what activities help you stay at your peak or maybe disconnect? And what has helped you to be a better leader?
Couple of answers to that. We were talking about family earlier. I have my children, and again, really blessed. As much as I get to pick on them about the small stuff, I get to speak to both of them almost every day, and it could be a minute, could be an hour. That the family overall is obviously, I don't have my parents anymore, but I shared a little bit. That helps me every once in a while stop.
Mm.
I have this, and I started this years ago after losing a close friend. I have what I call my minute of catharsis every morning, where I give myself a minute to complain and whine about the day, and then I go, "Okay, you're done now. Move on." That's one snippet. Two, you talked about my quote board on
Yeah.
why. Every once in a while, I will literally sit here and just read some of them, or open. I have a quote file that I keep, and I'll reflect on them. The two activities that help me, and I admittedly don't disconnect well. One of them is cooking.
Mm.
If I'm in the kitchen, especially preparing for entertaining, I'll put on some music, and I could just be. It's one of the few ways where the rest of the world is like out there. And the other one's skiing.
Mm.
And skiing for me is much more profound than just people will say, well, you have to pay attention when you're on the slopes, but it's more than that. The minute I will get off a plane and the cold air will hit my nostrils and I see the mountains, I often tell my executive assistant, it's one of the few times where I'll tell her, if you need to find me, you'll have to send the ski patrol, because I'm not looking at my phone. Whether that's on the chairlift, it's one of the few things I allow myself to truly just be one. I'll cycle and I'll run. They're a little different. They're not as profound as skiing or cooking for me.
Mm. So I hear that you are fully in the moment,
Yes.
and it helps you disconnect from your brain and just enjoy the moment.
It's I guess people use the term guilty pleasure. It's sort of my way to spoil myself is when I can get out on the mountains.
We often learn from sports or activities that we do, and we take that back in our work. How do you see the parallels between that, maybe cooking and skiing, and your work?
It's interesting, because if you were ever to watch me cook, there's the artist. I'm very creative. I'm terrible at. I don't follow recipes. I use recipes to inspire me. But once I decide what I make, then you see the engineer. Then you see I have my mise en place, everything's prepared, everything's like, and you don't mess with it, right? And so I guess the corollary to what you're talking about is, you know, leadership is art and science. There's the science of, here are the guardrails. You know, we're currently not a publicly traded company, but our debt is traded publicly, so we have our earnings calls, and you know, and we have our compliance because we're in healthcare. So you've got the science, but the managing of people and situations is art. There's no playbook for every situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you and I, we go back a little. You referred to McKesson a few times. I've always known you as being a talent champion and a very keen supporter of people. Why and where does that come from?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Danny. A month and a half ago, I was actually, I called it, I got the band back together, my team from McKesson Specialty. 2 years ago, I did this thing called Nick's Kitchen Cabinet. I was chairing a bunch of companies, brought all the CEOs together. And I will tell you, it's like my greatest source of pride is watching individuals that I've gotten to work with and have made an ounce of contribution to helping them succeed, and not just succeed in their roles and their titles, but watching them in their personal lives and what they're doing. I can't explain it, but it's my greatest source of pride. It's the, like, especially if I was the person that helped them in whatever way to get to that proverbial next step. Now, with that, you know, I mentioned this earlier, and you know, my wife Claudia, who you've met in the past, one time had said to me, she says, "You spend this inordinate amount of time on your people." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "One, because I'm genuinely interested, and two, from a leadership, this may sound a little cold, they're the ones that generate the results." Go back to what we were saying earlier. And I don't know if that fits in the art and science bucket or intent. First and foremost, I just have this genuine interest in people. Two, in helping them kind of get through the, where do you want to go and how do we help them get there? And that just creates, and this, I'm going to sound like an engineer, that flywheel of, the more you do of that, the more power there is to that as well. So there's one, a genuine interest. Two, if you can go back to, you know, the beginning of our call where we talked about helping people identify what it is they want to pursue, and how can you help, you know, contribute or find others, you know, do a lot of networking for people as well, to make sure that they're connected. And so I don't know, I don't have a specific answer to it. It does start with just genuinely being interested in people.
Balancing senior leadership and personal life can sometimes be challenging. What strategies do you use to maintain your focus and energy, and what advice would you have for those who are striving for that balance?
That's probably the toughest question you're going to ask me on this call, because one, I don't know that I do a stellar job at it, and it is very individual. It was interesting. My son, when he started his career, on one of my many calls with him, I was driving home, and he calls me and he says, "Dad," he goes, "You know, I got a question for you." He says, like, how do you figure out work-life balance?" And I started laughing. I was in the car laughing, and I said to him, I said, "You know who you're talking to, right? You've known me your whole life." It's like, work-life balance is, there's no definition to it. It's individual. And I think one of the mistakes we make as well when we put that label on it is, if an outsider were to look at me, I'm sure they would say he has no work-life balance. I'm always on, right? But the balance comes on how you define it. And I'm not talking about quantity versus quality. And I'll share this, and I think my children would be okay with me sharing it. I turned 60 last year, and we had a small gathering, and my children wrote a speech. And my son said to everybody, he says, "You know, for those of you that have known my dad a long time, you know, he travels a lot, works a lot." He goes, "But I never noticed." He says, "Because I reflect on every moment that was important to me, and he was there." And I was not expecting this. One of the few times you probably would have seen me not having something to say because I was choked up. And it was, you know, it was one of those defining moments for me. It helped me kind of go, okay, I guess I probably did balance it right, because he didn't notice. And I didn't make it a point for him not to notice. He just didn't notice. So I always encourage people to think about what is your work-life balance, because all too often I'll hear people say, "Oh, family's the most important thing," and yet they'll make decisions where it's money-based and not family. And then
Hmm.
they say, "Wow, I need the money for." Well, it all depends on what kind of lifestyle you want to have. Where do you want to
Hmm.
go? I remember we used to have those boxes you would check every year on your performance review, and there was this one box that always said, "Are you willing to relocate?" And I would find it filled in once in a while with people I know that would never relocate. And I'd ask them, I go, "Why did you check that box?" "Well, I thought it would look bad if I didn't." And so it's going to look worse if I give you an opportunity somewhere else and you're not willing to do it.
Yes.
Right. So it all kind of, for me, comes together on what is it you're willing to do. And that changes with time. One of your colleagues, back in the day from our corporate office, I remember this. She said to me, she goes, "Your life is like a 4 burner stove. There's you, your family, your friends, and your job. You get to pick two at any one given moment." And for a long time, it was job and family. There was no me time. There was no friend time. And I just needed to be okay with that. Because the minute I would introduce any other one of those, something has to give. And you need to be okay with that. That's why I often tell people, like, I don't know that you want this role. I've worked with my direct reports and helping them develop successors. And just recently, someone had said to me in a COO role, which is a pretty intense role, said, "My 24/7 is different than your 24/7." And you need to appreciate sort of what comes with that. And if you're not willing to, then that gives you some clarity on should you be in the role or not.
Hmm. So being clear on what's important to you and making choices.
Yes.
I want to talk a bit about the future. So how do you think leadership and education can evolve to better prepare the next generation of professionals and leaders?
It's what did Confucius say? May you live in interesting times, right? What's interesting to me, and I don't know if you're noticing it in your research or working with organizations, the trades are coming back in vogue, right? Why?
Hmm.
Because there's a need. And
Yes.
this goes back to a theme we've talked about a lot, is in respecting the need for those roles and having. So I look at, both my children have university degrees and have taken two very different paths. My son's a civil engineer focused on water resources. My daughter is more in the arts, a little more, the lines are a little less clear, and very different on how they think about leadership and what they want to pursue. And so I look at the generations, and probably a couple of generations now versus where I started. And I think a lot of times we make the mistake of saying, "Well, they're not motivated," or "they're not." One, I
Mm.
don't believe that's true. They are motivated. And I think if you stop and look and listen and pay attention, actually, they're very motivated. Sometimes uncomfortably for us, because they're motivated to do things that don't align with the way we looked at the world.
Yes.
So one, I think we need to spend more time recognizing what do they want their world to look like?
Hmm.
How do we counterbalance that to the realities of decisions that have been made, and coming up with, like, how long is it going to take to get to that change? What are realistic paths? And that goes back to all the points we've talked about: being genuine to people, being honest with people, working with them, willing to make compromises yourself. I think there's still so many opportunities for change. This one ambulance sort of day that I spent with the shift alone, someone asked me, "So what was it like?" And I said, "Well, I got to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Fortunately, there's a lot of good. The bad was, little things you can pick on. The ugly, though, is more systemic and societal. And
Mm.
there's so many opportunities for us to make an impact, a positive impact and change. And how do we package that for these generations that are coming up, helping them get the clarity on what roles they want to play,
Hmm.
identifying the folks that have that potential and that desire to take on those leadership roles, and get our arms around them."
Yes. One observation I make, because I'm in that business, is it's a never ending process, right? Development. And a lot of companies invest, stop, then start again. And so I don't think it's a constant in many businesses, unfortunately.
Hmm.
So people have to be more owners of their own development.
Yes.
Okay, I'm at the wrap up. I'd like to leave our audience with a reflection. So, what's one thing you'd like them to reflect on when it comes to their own leadership journey or their purpose?
Um, Understand your why. When you sit there, don't don't be confused by the titles, enamored with the company or the industry. Think about what's your why, and that'll help guide you, give you at least some clarity, and then seek out the people that. Once you understand it, seek out the people that you've identified that you think have had some success with it, and reach out to them. More often than not, they're going to be willing to engage with you and help you.
Mm. So, understand your why. And I'd say be curious.
Yep.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for taking the time to answer all my questions with such generosity.
Well, thanks for having me. Great to see you, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you so much, and all the best for what you do. And hopefully we can do this again.
All right. Take care,
Thank
Danny. Have a great day.
you too.
In this inspiring conversation, Nick shares how his journey was shaped by his parents, Italian immigrants. Starting work at 10, he learned discipline, the value of hard work, and most importantly, respect for people in every role. On his leadership path, gaps in people willing to step up drove him to act, motivated by the desire to give back. The secret to his success? Curiosity, understanding the why, contributing to meaningful change, and investing in the success of those around him. For Nick, it's never been about titles. It's about stepping in, building teams, and moving things forward. He describes his leadership as servant-oriented, mindful, honest, and reliable. He listens, reflects, and responds with transparency, involving his team in objectives they believe in and driving toward shared success. Family is central. Reflection is daily through his morning moment of catharsis or his quote board. Cooking and skiing bring him fully into the moment. Looking ahead, Nick reminds us that the trades are essential and that we need them. The challenge is helping the next generations gain clarity on the roles they want, identify those with potential and desire, and surround them with the right support. His advice: understand your why. Then seek out those who've succeeded. They'll often guide you. Through his journey, Nick embodies authenticity, from engineer to becoming a healthcare CEO. As he puts it so well, leadership is both a science and an art. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Peak Talent. If this conversation inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our goal is to bring you insightful conversations that shed new light on your journey and leadership, while uncovering the contagious inspiration of surpassing yourself.